In 1991, the early spring had just passed. Although the sun was shining brightly, there was still a bit of chilly chill in the air. Liang Yifei, who was released after serving his sentence, stood on the dirt road outside Beihe Farm in Binhai City, carrying a net pocket in one hand, which contained an enamel cup for brushing his teeth, a plastic basin for washing his face, and a large nylon bag behind him, his bedding. This is all his property. He was a little confused. Crossed. In his last life, he owned his own business. He was sentenced to a heavy sentence due to economic problems. He died of an accidental illness. When he opened his eyes, he came to the released prisoner of the same name. When I was 19 or 16 years old this year, I was sentenced to 4 years for fighting and assaulting others. I spent 2 years in the juvenile detention center. After I turned 18, I was escorted to prison to continue serving my sentence. During my sentence, I performed well and my sentence was reduced by 1 year. Just a few days before his release, he suddenly became seriously ill and was on the verge of death, when he was taken advantage of by Liang Yifei more than 20 years later. Looking back, on the black wall of 10 meters, there are 8 big characters that are so white and dazzling: actively transform, be a new person. A person who has never been in prison will not have a deep understanding. Liang Yifei has been in prison for 2 lifetimes. When he saw these 8 characters, his mind was like ringing a bell, and then another 8 characters appeared naturally: freedom is precious, don't commit crimes. In a previous life, there was an MBA teacher nicknamed Big Cannon, who once exaggeratedly said, "Some successful entrepreneurs want to truly become great entrepreneurs." Can reflect on their own prison disaster. What is Hongzhong de Lu, what is awakening, and what is Daigo empowerment? If you suffer a loss, you will understand. Don't look, let's go. The speaker was a middle-aged man wearing glasses, and his eyebrows resembled Liang Yifei's. He was not very old, he looked to be in his early 40s, but his temples were slightly white. He was wearing a blue working uniform, with the words Binhai City Cannery written on his chest. Liang Yifei's father, Liang Yuchen, works in the propaganda department of the Binhai Cannery factory, and came to pick him up from prison today. Liang Yifei nodded, but walked slowly to the river embankment by the roadside, staring blankly at the mighty and rolling river in front of him. When Liang Yuchen thought that his son would do something stupid, Liang Yifei suddenly took off the nylon bag he was carrying, swung it up together with the net pocket in his hand, and threw it hard into the river. You can't see a splash of water. Those prison luggage were swallowed up by the river in a blink of an eye. He shouted at Dajiang with exhaustion. Fuck your uncle! Liang Yuchen stopped and silently looked at the back of the sun on the embankment. A few minutes later, Liang Yifei came down. Liang Yuchen didn't say much, just patted the back seat of the old 28 bicycle and said, "Dad will take you home." A simple "Dad take you home" made Liang Yifei feel sad for a while. He was an orphan in his last life, and he never knew what his father and mother were like, and what it was like to be a family. It was probably this experience that caused him to be unwilling to get married even though he had a group of so-called confidants. "Dad, I'll take you on a bike. It's dozens of miles away from the city on a dirt road." Liang Yifei grabbed the front of the car, and the sound of "Dad" didn't make any psychological barriers. Liang Yuchen, who was actually not very old, was stubborn like an old man. He turned the bridle aside, lowered his head and said stubbornly, "Dad will take you." Beihe prison is on the outskirts of the city. The way back is very long. Most of the roads are dirt roads, and it has only rained. It is really difficult to walk. Liang Yuchen's back is a little stooped, and he is pedaling his bicycle vigorously. Sometimes Liang Yifei wants to push down when he encounters an uphill or stagnant muddy ground, but Liang Yuchen refuses to let him go. He says, "Sit firmly, Dad will take you," and then continue to pedal with gritted teeth. Liang Yifei didn't say anything. No matter how difficult the road was, he would sit in the back honestly and let Liang Yuchen fulfill his promise of a father bringing his son home. If someone truly regards himself as a son, then I will truly treat him as a son. Returning to the city in the bumps and bumps. In the early 1990s, in Binhai City, Liang Yifei looked very dilapidated and old-fashioned. The streets were full of old buildings that fell to the ground. People wore the same blue uniforms and rode the same bicycles, forming a spectacular traffic flow. Occasionally, a few cars passed by on the roadway, and they were all old-fashioned sedans whose brands were almost unrecognizable, square, like iron boxes. Monotony, unity, and rusticity are the basic impressions of Liang Yifei. Interestingly, under these monotonous appearances, Liang Yifei was stunned to find that everyone was very energetic. In these years, in order to increase the salary of 2 yuan and transfer a half-level professional title, there are many cases of feuding among colleagues. Things. Riding an old bicycle and dressed in shabby and old-fashioned clothes, he seems to be rushing into the future. Of course, not everyone has a smile on their faces. I went to the police station to report to the police station first, and the policeman said with a cold face, "Be honest after you come out, report the situation immediately, and come to get your ID card in a month. Then go home." The area where Liang Yifei lives is a vocational factory area. The workers of several factories in Binhai City, such as cannery, soda factory, radio factory, etc., all live here. There are large bungalows, and there is a small street with a width of 7 or 8 meters at the entrance. The nickname is Little Hong Kong. Although the whole street looks dilapidated and narrow, it is very lively because it is the only place where workers from several factories go to and from get off work. Shampoo room. There were too many people on the street, and it was difficult to ride a bicycle. The two got out of the car and walked away. They met acquaintances several times on the road. I just said hello to Liang Yuchen, and when they saw Liang Yifei, who was shaved with green skin behind him, the faces of the acquaintances immediately changed. After a change, he hurriedly avoided it, like hiding from the plague. On the other hand, there was a child, only 12 or 13 years old, with a bottle of orange soda in his hand, ran over with a happy face. You are brother Yifei, right? When will you take me to the stall again?" For a moment, I was really impressed. Before he was imprisoned, he set up a street stall, and this child helped himself as a caregiver. At that time, he was paid a bottle of soda and a cream popsicle a day. I didn't expect to recognize myself after so long. Just as he showed a smile, he stretched out his hand to pat him on the shoulder, but when his hand touched it, an ant rushed out from the side and dragged the child to fly. He punched his butt, and said loudly, "I won't let you learn well. Let you not learn well. In the future, I will put you in prison and eat prison food for the rest of your life." Liang Yifei smiled, not feeling very well, but he didn't say anything. I have a normal relationship with a white man with a red top. I have done this kind of thing in my previous life. If I had children, I would not let him associate with prisoners of labor reform. On the other hand, Liang Yuchen's face became ugly, as if it was about to rain, his lips were shaking with anger, and blue veins appeared on his temples, which could happen at any time. Liang Yifei gently pulled Liang Yuchen's hand and said softly, "Dad, let's go home, I'm hungry." Yes, if you don't go home today, Dad will take you to a restaurant. Eat well." Liang Yuchen parked his car at the entrance of a small restaurant in the middle of Xiaoxiangjiang. The front door was not big, and there was a sign on it, "A Ping Restaurant." It's the point of having a meal. The business in the small restaurant is good. There are already 70 to 80% of the seats, and most of them are nearby workers dressed in the same clothes as Liang Yuchen. The 18-inch black and white telephone set on the counter was playing the 1990s version of the Feng Shen Bang. The workers who came to eat were all focused on Daji, who was wearing a layer of tulle, revealing 2 white and tender thighs. With relish, no one noticed this man. I found the most unobtrusive table in the corner and sat down. After a while, a young woman in her 30s wearing an apron came over. Seeing Liang Yifei, who was shaved off the head, the young woman was stunned for a moment, and then asked affectionately, "Yo, is this Yifei?" Yet, he performed well in it and his sentence was commuted. Liang Yuchen was very polite to the woman and said, "There is no oil or water in it, I will bring him to eat something to replenish his body." "Yifei, this is the lady boss, you can call Aunt Ping, yes, when Dad comes to see you many of the dishes brought to you were made by your Aunt Ping." Aunt Ping wiped her hands on the apron and smiled, "Hey, why are you talking about this? Brother Yuchen, it's not like you didn't pay me, I'm just doing this business." "Aunt Ping, your craftsmanship is very good. If it weren't for your dishes, I might have been bullied in prison." Liang Yifei stood up and politely held the other person's hands. "This woman is not ugly, with a round face and a bit capable, but she is not as aggressive and sharp as the powerful women of later generations, and she looks very comfortable. Sit down quickly, sit and talk, just come out. If you want something to eat, Auntie will cook it for you." Aunt Ping said. There is a menu on the table, all of which are very common home-cooked dishes. Liang Yifei has been in prison for 2 lifetimes, and he is indeed greedy. In prison, you can eat enough, but there is no oil, let alone taste. The dishes are not expensive. Pork is only 50 cents a pound these days. Liang Yuchen is a cadre of the propaganda department, and he has to have 200 yuan a month. Liang Yifei ordered several dishes, all of which were hard dishes. "Brother Yuchen, can you and your grandfather have some wine to celebrate?" Aunt Ping asked. Liang Yuchen hesitated for a moment, then smiled, "No, we have to talk about things tonight." "Okay, the two of you will sit down for a while, and you'll be fine soon." After Aunt Ping left, Liang Yuchen coughed and said in a low voice, "Yifei, if there is such a situation, Dad will discuss it with you." The tone was cautious, not like Lao Tzu talking to his son. Liang Yifei, who was afraid that he was released from prison, probably had a rebellious mentality. Yu reading www.yuuganshu.com. "Dad, tell me, I'm listening." Liang Yifei said. Liang Yuchen nodded, considered his words, and said, "You are not too young this year. Dad thinks that you are in this situation, and it is difficult to find a job. I asked you Uncle Joe to see if you can be an apprentice in the factory. Uncle Joe, I'll come home tonight, I'll talk to you, and I should have a chat with you, don't choke when you get there, you can listen to what he says, advance to the factory, there's a job, and then there's something else." Uncle Joe is Zhou Wangzhen, the director of the cannery, a military internetkador, and has a good personal relationship with Liang Yuchen. When Liang Yifei was sentenced, Zhou Wangzhen also helped him to ask around. Like many children from factories and mines, Liang Yifei has been a naughty and restless master since he was a child. When he was a child, he threw bricks and firecrackers at the cesspool. When he grew up, he fought with a group of children from outside factories and the society. Afraid that he would be taught a few words by Zhou Wangzhen, he would have a bad temper and be bullied on the spot. Zhou Wangzhen is a really slaughtered character, would he be afraid that a labor prisoner would mess with him? It's really messy, and the matter of entering the factory is yellow. The matter of entering the factory has become a problem. My son is a reform-through labor prisoner. Which unit dares to ask for him, and would they want him? What about life in the future? Liang Yifei nodded obediently and said, "Dad, don't worry, I've learned a lot of things over the past few years in prison. I'll just listen to what he says." Hearing that his son could say that, Liang Yuchen breathed a sigh of relief, and Lao Huai said okay with relief, took a pair of chopsticks from the chopstick holder, wiped them hard, and gently placed them in front of Liang Yifei. "As soon as you fly, the past will pass. You are only 19 and Dad is only 42. Both of us are working hard. Now the situation in the whole country is very good, and we will be able to live well in the future. Okay, Dad, I'll listen to you. It's good to have ambition, but it's not good to have no money. In the past 5,000 years, there are not only 1 or 2 heroic men who have been killed by a penny, and more than 1 or 2 of them have been drowned out by reality. At the end of the meal, Liang Yifei realized that the hard dishes he ordered were really not cheap. Liang Yuchen rummaged through his pockets and took out a pile of notes worth 1 or 2 yuan, 150 cents, but he was surprised that he didn't collect enough 18 yuan or 60 cents. Aunt Ping kept standing by the side, holding her arms, with a smile that was not a smile on her face, looking at Liang Yuchen's embarrassment when he was looking for tickets. After taking out several pockets, Liang Yuchen shook his head with a wry smile, neatly folded a stack of crumpled bills, and handed them over. Ping, there's still $5.50 left. I'll bring it to you the day after tomorrow at the latest. Brother Yuchen, you intellectuals are not good at this. Aunt Ping stopped laughing, folded her arms on her chest, and didn't even look at the money. She glared at Liang Yuchen and said reluctantly, I'll treat my eldest nephew to a meal and let him catch the wind, what's wrong? Give me money. Ping, you are running a shop, you can live on this, you don't need money. Liang Yuchen insisted. When Aunt Ping turned her head, she cleaned up the tableware and chopsticks on the table, making a lot of noise, and without looking at Liang Yuchen, she said with a stern face, if you want to see things like this, don't come in the future. Liang Yifei watched from the side and felt that something was not right. What do you mean, these two, Sir, it's all right. Seeing that he was stiff, he laughed and said, Dad, Aunt Ping has some thoughts. I will make money from work in the future. If I come to Aunt Ping for dinner, it will be over. Right, look, Yifei is more sensible, and he will definitely have a bright future in the future. Okay, Yifei will only be back today, and I won't leave you anymore. The two of you should go home to take a bath and talk. As Aunt Ping said, the money was also confiscated, so she quickly turned around and left with a few empty plates. Liang Yuchen looked at Aunt Ping's back with mixed feelings and sighed. He is a high school student. His education is not low at present. He can be regarded as an intellectual. He is a coder in the factory. He is handsome. Liang Yifei asked strangely, Dad, why is the situation at home so difficult? Anyway, the old man has 200 yuan a month, how come he can't even get more than 10 yuan for a meal? Liang Yuchen waved his hand and said, Hey, the factory has not been able to do well in the past 6 months. For more than 2 months, only half of the salary has been paid. Besides, I have asked someone to help you enter the factory. You are not allowed to buy any tobacco, alcohol, and tea. The Liang family is located in the PF area less than 50 meters behind Xiaoxiangjiang. It is a bit like the urban village of later generations. There are rows of bungalows next to each other, but it is much cleaner than the dirty and poor urban villages. After all, the people who live in the factory area are the backbone of society, not the old, weak, sick, and disabled in urban villages in later generations. I met a few neighbors at the door of my house. I saw Yang Yifei and came up to greet him. The attitude was much better than those of the acquaintances I met on the street. The two of them were not in the mood to be mean to these people, so they went home directly. The Liang family is not big. There is a living room and a bedroom. There is a double bed in the living room. The bedroom was lived in by Liang Yifei before. Although no one lived there for several years, it was clean. There is an 18-inch black and white TV in the living room. It is square and has a big belly. There are 2 knobs on the side. At first glance, it looks like a microwave oven, and there are 2 antennae like cricket whiskers on its head. Next to the TV is a writing desk. On the writing desk, there is a black and white photo. A young woman with big braids. Liang Yuchen lit 2 sticks of incense, flashed the fire with his hands, and gave Liang Yifei a stick. Give your mother some incense sticks. Liang Yifei is also a hard-working child, and his mother died when he was 8 years old. The person who took the incense and the 8 classics bowed 3 times, and Liang Yuchen also worshipped the incense twice, saying in his mouth, "Zai Uping, my son has come out. He is much more stable than before. I have already asked Lao Zhou to let his son enter the factory. Don't worry." After serving the incense, he pulled Liang Yifei into the inner cabin, and pulled out a plastic bag from under the belly of the bed. When I opened it, I saw 2 Hungta mountains, 2 bottles of Daikwa, and a lady's plum blossom watch. No wonder he didn't even have money for a meal. I'll send it. Your Uncle Joe specified not to, but we can't play stupid. He comes over at night, and this is about to happen. You take these to his house tomorrow night. If he doesn't accept it, you leave it and leave. Liang Yuchen instructed. Okay. Liang Yifei said. It is customary for the children of employees to enter the factory. It stands to reason that there is no need to ask for help. However, Liang Yifei's situation is special. After all, he is a prisoner of reform through labor. In addition, the factory's profitability is not good during this time. A group of employees' children are waiting to enter the factory. Let him enter the factory, there is still a lot of favor. Liang Yuchen also talked to Liang Yifei about the factory for a while, to prevent Zhou Wangzhen from inspecting, and his son could not answer. At 8:30, someone knocked on the door. When he opened the door, he saw a middle-aged man with a national character face. When the wind blew, the sleeve of his left arm was empty. If this is a martial arts movie, then Liang Yifei will have to call him Drive Yang, or Big Brother Yang. Unfortunately not. The director of the cannery, Zhou Wangzhen, a fighting hero. Followed by another person, naturally not a big eagle, but Yang Aguo, chief of the marketing department of the cannery. Yo, I haven't seen it for a few years, he's grown into a big guy. Zhou Wangzhen looked at Liang Yifei up and down a few times, then punched him in the chest with a neither light nor heavy, and nodded, "Well, it's all right, I'm a little stronger, and it's a little darker, just come out. Don't look at it, there's only one arm left," but Zhou Wangzhen, who was born in a scout, is really strong in his hand, and Liang Yifei staggered a step backwards because of the hammer. Rubbing his chest and laughing, he rolled his eyes in his heart, thinking that if I were a bitch, just this moment, I'll rely on you. Yang Aguo followed with a smile and said, "The director is right, just come out, Xiao Yang, don't feel inferior, don't be discouraged, the whole country is in good shape now, you are young, as long as you are not lazy, there is still a way out in the future." Well, Liang Yuchen was calling to make tea. Originally, when he saw Yang Aguo coming, he felt a little drum in his heart. Hearing Yang Aguo's words again, he felt that something was not right, so he looked back at Zhou Wangzhen with an inquiring look. "Yuchen, I'm here today. I have 2 things to tell you." Zhou Wangzhen took the initiative to take Liang Yuchen's tea, took out a packet of red plums from his pocket with one arm, shook one out and handed it to Liang Yuchen, bit one himself, shook another to Yang Aguo, and finally glanced at it. Liang Yifei shook the cigarette case at him. Liang Yifei laughed and waved his hand to signal not to smoke. Liang Yuchen turned a match and lit it for Zhou Wangzhen, looking at him suspiciously, his eyes filled with anticipation and fear, like a prisoner waiting for the final trial. Zhou Wangzhen took a deep breath and exhaled the smoke that had turned light blue. When the smoke dissipated, he sighed and said in a deep voice, "Yuchen, as soon as we flew into the factory, our party group discussed it and we didn't pass." The room fell silent. After almost half a minute, Liang Yuchen spoke up. "Factory manager, I have worked in the factory for more than 20 years, not to mention my contributions, at least I am conscientious, and I have won 5 or 6 times just by being an advanced model worker. It is an old rule for the children of employees to enter the factory. Why can't it be my son's turn? His tone was calm, but his attitude was firm. His words were sonorous and forceful, which was completely different from the silence on the way back and the embarrassment in Aunt Ping's restaurant. Yang Aguo is a member of the party group. He is with Zhou Wangzhen today. In addition to other work to discuss, he is actually doing Liang Yuchen's ideological work together. He smiled and said, "Yuchen, that's not what you mean, Yifei is after all. Come out. What happened when you just came out?" Facing Yang Aguo, who had similar qualifications as his own, Liang Yuchen was less polite and stared. He made a mistake, and the state shut him down. I have nothing to say. But now that his sentence has expired, his sins have been atonement. Why, people are not allowed to make mistakes, and if they make a mistake, they will be beaten to death. Lao Yang, haven't you made any mistakes? After reviewing and admitting your mistakes, didn't the organization trust you the same way? If you were convicted of hooliganism at that time, would you be there now? In 1985, Yang Aguo was watching an open-air movie, not knowing whether it was intentional or unintentional, he touched the buttocks of a female worker in the front row. In the end, the trouble came to the police station, and the factory came forward to save it. It was a self-criticism at the whole factory meeting, and it was at home to kneel on the washboard for my daughter-in-law. It was finally calmed down. If you want to stink Lao Yang, take this matter as an example, it's absolutely right, say it right away. Of course, this is only limited to old workers and codders like Liang Yuchen. If they can talk about it together, if young workers dare to mention this, old Yang has a way to deal with him. Yang Aguo blushed with embarrassment. Oh, tell me about Yuchen, why are you talking about this in front of a child? Zhou Wangzhen waved his hand and said, Yuchen, it's not against you, let alone Yifei. The children are all grown up by everyone, so why not help? But the problem is that the factory is in a difficult situation now. It's not that I don't know, there are more than 400,000 cans in the warehouse that can't be sold, the production line is going to stop, and even the wages are not fully paid. How can I enter the factory again? Don't tell you, even my own son wants to enter the factory. Yes, Yuchen, the director of the factory brought me here today. I'm still here to talk to you about the market. The publicity department should hurry up and find a way. Our two departments will cooperate to sell the backlog of canned food as soon as possible. In any case, pay off the bank loan first. They diverted the topic. Liang Yuchen didn't pick up on it at all. Whatever you say, I just keep paying attention, with a livid face, and leave a sentence. Director, I've worked in the factory all my life. The factory will take care of my family's affairs no matter what. The rest is easy to say. After speaking, he kept smoking and stopped talking. He told Liang Yifei not to have a hard time with Zhou Wangzhen, but for the sake of his son, he did it himself. But just as Liang Yuchen said, Zhou Wangzhen is also a tough guy, so he doesn't want to eat this. In peacetime, he will definitely help with Liang Yuchen's family affairs. The current director of the company is a big boss. He not only manages production, but also the employees' families. Besides, he has a good personal relationship with Liang Yuchen. Liang Yuchen has a good job performance and is a competent person for publicity. But in this situation, absolutely not. Liang Yifei is not the only employee who is waiting to enter the factory. What about the others? The factory has become like this, maybe one day it will become yellow, and a lot of new people who can't know anything will come in. Isn't this old birthday star who drinks arsenic and has a long life? Yang Aguo didn't say anything at the side, thinking of his small calculations in his heart. His son is also lining up to enter the factory. Otherwise, if they don't even enter the factory, if even Liang Yifei who was released from labor reform can enter the factory, then he will go to the secretary's place to make trouble and let his son also enter the marketing department. The atmosphere was very embarrassing, the family was surrounded by smoke, and no one spoke. It was Liang Yifei who broke the deadlock first, got up and opened the window to let the choking smell of smoke dissipate. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Uncle Joe, Uncle Yang, let me put it aside beforehand. Don't you want to talk to my dad about the factory? Let's talk about the factory first. What's wrong with the factory? For parents of this era, if their children can enter the factory, they will have a lifetime of iron rice bowls. But to Liang Yifei, it didn't matter at all. How about a small cannery, even if you go in and become a worker, working from 9 to 5 every day, earning more than 100 yuan a month, fighting red-faced with others for the bonus of 3 or 5 yuan, and always worrying about being laid off. Joke. This is the early 1990s, an era that can create miracles. Everything is brand new, everyone is crossing the river by feeling the stones, and there is no ready-made experience. They not only have a profit of the general trend of history, but also have the experience and lessons accumulated by countless people in their lifetimes during the decades of reform and opening up. Just like panning for gold, he already has gold in his mind, and he doesn't need to accumulate it slowly from tons of mud at the cost of time, money, etc. He didn't worry about the way out in the future at all. Flying was certain. The only difference was how high and how stable it was. I spend hundreds of thousands of dollars every minute, but you let me eat beef offal with you? What about playing? The promise to Liang Yuchen was purely to make him feel at ease, to be filial and filial, to follow the old man's meaning, that is, filial piety, not to enter the factory, and to reconcile Liang Yifei's mind. Liang Yifei made his statement, and Zhou Wangzhen always gave him a step to let Liang Yuchen go down, half joking and half earnestly saying, Yifei is still sensible. You are not too young, just listen to it together. Well, if you have a solution, I promise you to enter the factory. Liang Yifei smiled and said nothing. If he can solve the inventory of hundreds of thousands of bottles, what he wants is not as simple as entering the factory. The Jinxing canning factory in Binhai City is small in scale and has hundreds of people, but it has a long and glorious history. Since the establishment of the factory in the 1960s, it has specially provided canned military supplies for the troops. The canned edible reserves of a certain department in the Nanjiang military region are all produced by the Jinxing canning factory and are not sold to the outside world. This leads to two results. First, the cannery is not worried about the market, so it has not cultivated a group of professional market personnel. The marketing department managed by Yang Aguo was also set up on a temporary basis, and the staff were all taken from the propaganda department. Like Liang Yuchen, Lao Yang was the deputy chief of the propaganda department before. Second, don't worry about the market, focus on making products, and the quality of canned food is really nothing to say. Beginning in the late 1980s, millions of troops were cut across the country. By the end of 1989, the entire Nanjiang military region had disappeared, and in the Grand Military Region, the cannery lost customers overnight. At the beginning of this year, in line with the trend of national enterprise reform, the cannery was stripped from the plan and brought to the market for marketization. According to the interim regulations on further expanding the autonomy of state-owned industrial enterprises issued in 1984, the superiors delegated powers, ranging from personnel power to economic power, all 16 powers were delegated to the factory manager. But the problem is, having power doesn't mean you can do a good job in a business. The market didn't buy it, the order couldn't be signed, the bank loan was pressing for repayment, the workshop was about to stop production, and the warehouse was still crammed with more than 400,000 bottles of canned food and a lot of raw materials. The current situation of the canning factory is four reliances: wages depend on loans, expenses depend on money, living depends on spirit, and making money depends on dreaming. Speaking of which, one word: difficult. Yang Aguo sighed on the side, it's a matter of time. Take your time. With the quality of our canned food, we will be able to grab some market share for a year or two. Zhou Wangzhen glanced at him and said nothing. Yang Aguo is talking about correct nonsense. The factory owes a huge amount of debt, plus workers' wages and various operating expenses. If it is not a year or two, if it drags on for more than half a year, it will be slaughtered. He said to Liang Yuchen, Yuchen, I came to see you today, and I hope your publicity department will use your brains again to see if you can come up with an effective publicity plan. Liang Yuchen shook his head and said nothing. If his son's matter is not resolved, he can't hold his breath. Besides, the publicity department has already done its best. Regular publicity is advertising, television, newspapers, radio. TV commercials are often sold for a year and a half. They are too expensive and can't be bought by the cannery. Fewer and fewer people listen to the radio, so they are not considered. Newspapers are the only option. At present, each unit will set a newspaper, the audience is the largest, and it is also the main carrier of advertising. The problem is that there are too many advertisements in the newspapers, and people don't necessarily read them. They just pass the time and forget about them. With so many advertisements every day, who can remember a canned food seller? If you put up a newspaper to sell atomic bombs, people will definitely have an impression. Seeing that everyone had no idea, Zhou Wangzhen smiled at Liang Yifei and said, Boy, do you understand? Again, you really have a good idea, and the urgent need has been solved. I'll let you join the factory. Actually, Liang Yifei didn't take Liang Yifei seriously. No one expected him to be imprisoned at the age of 16, with no factory experience at all, to solve such a big problem. It's nothing more than giving everyone a step down. If Liang Yifei can't solve it, then Zhou Wangzhen can't be blamed. On the other hand, if Liang Yifei really has a way, then it is only natural to get him an employee quota, and no one can have a second opinion. Zhou Wangzhen and Yang Aguo both looked at Liang Yifei with laughter and waited for him to say no way. Who knew that Liang Yifei thought about it, but said, Uncle Zhou, if I can really solve it, I don't want to go to the factory. Can I get a cash reward? Several adults were slightly taken aback, and even Liang Yuchen suddenly turned his head and looked at his son in confusion. Is there any way? Liang Yifei said calmly, the factory is in trouble. I am the son of a worker, and it is my responsibility to come up with an idea. But now it's a market economy, and I have only come out, and my life is unfulfilled. An idea must be rewarded. Zhou Wangzhen mentioned the word idea several times in a row, reminding him of a famous person in his previous life. The king of ideas sold 400,000 by selling golden ideas around 1992, the Youth Daily reported on the deeds of a skilled worker named Zhang Yang. This person neither engaged in production nor did he run the market. With just his lip service, he made a lot of valuable work for many companies. Idea, earning millions of dollars before and after, is known as the Idea King, which has aroused great repercussions. For a time, there was a brainstorm all over the country, and the Idea King Zhang Yang also became the originator of China's business creativity and marketing planning. In the spring evening of 1994, Feng Gong Niyukan used this as a prototype and compiled a sketch, Dian Company. Feng Dagong almost made a series of the same name. The autobiography of the Idea King, Zhang Yang's Golden Idea, was read by Liang Yifei at a business school in his last life, and most of them are very simple and common marketing methods in the eyes of later generations. For example, after the Gulf War, the lamp was made into the shape of a Scud missile, a plastic pull ring that could be lifted was added to the water cup for easy carrying, the left and right children's shoes were printed on one and merged together to form a pattern to prevent wear. Wrong foot. It seems that there is no technical content to say it, but it is very useful. At that time, the MBA class specially analyzed the Zhang Yang phenomenon. Reform and opening up, the three major dividends. The first one is economic development, bringing about all-round and explosive growth of the consumer market. But in the early stages, the demand has grown and the entrepreneur's marketing skills are poor. At this time, who can think of ingenious, practical, and distinctive marketing skills, who can quickly occupy the market in a short period of time. How fast? To surpass the Internet era of later generations. In the Internet age, although information dissemination is convenient, there is also too much information. People are already immune to common marketing techniques. Competition is fierce for the same materials and marketing methods. So, the early 1990s was an era full of miracles. This time, Yang Aguo spoke first, with a sarcastic tone. Yo, Yi Fei, you've done your best in jail, you all know about the market economy. Lao Yang felt unhappy. He was the head of the marketing department. He couldn't solve the problem even with all his strength. Can Liang Yifei solve it? It's just a kid's joke. Zhou Wangzhen waved his hand. You talk about it first. Liang Yifei pondered for a while, and said, in the past, we used to supply the army, and the market has long been seized by others. Now it is very difficult to grab it back for a while. Besides, this is also a problem of the general environment. In recent years, the economic conditions have been getting better and better. Although many food items are still purchased with tickets, in general, there is no shortage of materials. The country will make a special document every year to ensure the adequate supply of food and non-staple food. It turns out that when supplies are in short supply, prepare for wars and famines, and even treat it as a canned food for open meat, and the market is getting smaller and smaller. As for the product itself, no matter how good the canned food tastes, it is not as good as the fresh one. There are also preservatives and so on. Besides, canned food is compressed food, and it takes several kilograms of raw materials to make 1 kilogram of finished products, and the price is not cheap. For the price of buying a can of canned beef, you can buy several kilograms of fresh beef. Originally, the market is getting smaller and smaller, but there are actually 7 canning factories in Nanjiang province, big or small. How could it be so easy to sell? Liang Yifei said. These are all problems left over from the confrontation between the two poles of the world and the tense preparations for war in the past. It was correct at the time, but it has become a troublesome problem now. Therefore, it is necessary to keep pace with the times and reform. After listening to Liang Yifei's market analysis, Zhou Wangzhen's views on him have changed a lot. Although he didn't say a solution, he was very precise about himself and the market. Anyway, when Lao Yang reported to him, he never explained it so thoroughly. Even Zhou Wangzhen himself didn't expect to be so clear and hit the key points. According to what you said, the cannery must fail. Zhou Wangzhen asked with a frown. Liang Yifei shook his head and said sternly, I don't care if the environment is good or not. We have to sell it. It's because the environment is getting more and more difficult, so we need to be fast. The key now is to give full play to our own advantages, and to make great use of short-term strategies. Within time, a sensational effect will be formed, marching quickly, and opening the market quickly. Utilizing product advantages and opening up the market is a simple statement. Again, Yang Aguo interrupted. His marketing department specializes in this. What are the advantages of the cannery? Is the quality of good? Fools know. That would have to be some idiot inside the cannery, too. The market is not clear. It has not been a year and a half to accumulate word of mouth. How can this advantage be exploited? Advertising alone is not enough. In advertising, who doesn't say that their quality is good and their products are quack? Zhou Wangzhen waved his hand to interrupt Yang Aguo's complaints. He had heard enough of Lao Yang's clichés and complaints, but now he is very interested in Liang Yifei's thoughts and asked, Yifei, what do you think? I say? I will not say. If you don't say it, what should I say? Liang Yifei sells a small business with a small, he smiled, and kept his mouth shut. He was reborn once, and he didn't owe anyone anything. Even if he did, one life would be enough to repay. The factory is really not ready to enter, it doesn't make any sense, it's just a waste of life. But he must have money, and the more the better. Zhou Wangzhen understood the meaning of Liang Yifei's silence, pondered for a moment, and said, Yifei, let me tell you something plain. The bonus can be given, but how much it will be given cannot be determined now. Uncle Zhou is the director of the factory, and he is responsible for the organization and employees. You can understand this truth. Liang Yifei was satisfied with Zhou Wangzhen's statement. This is his first sale. Without a successful case, of course others will not give money first. People of this age just don't have enough business experience and brains, and they're not fools. Just say a few words from yourself, and people will take out thousands of them. Returning the favor, Liang Yifei then continued, Uncle Zhou, I have a whole set of plans for the factory's situation, namely product improvement, marketing, and advertising. Let's take it step by step. Yo, it's still a set and boxing and a combination of boxing. Yang Aguo interjected strangely from the side again, I want to tell you Yifei, the factory has no money right now, so if you buy machinery, it will not work. You don't need to buy new machines or produce anything new, just repackage these cans, reprint a few words, and adjust the packaging template. It doesn't cost a lot of money. Liang Yifei said. What about the specifics? Zhou Wangzhen asked curiously. Liang Yifei thought about it for a while, then turned around to find white paper and pencils from the drawer of the writing desk, and roughly drew the appearance of a can. The bottom of the can was originally printed with the expiry date, and Liang Yifei wrote 4 small characters on the side. Internal special offer below the small print, a small 5-point star was drawn. Several people looked at each other. What does this mean? Zhou Wangzhen picked up the paper and looked at it carefully for a while, then turned his head and looked at Liang Yifei with puzzled eyes. Liang Yifei clicked on these 4 words with a pencil, and said, How can the advantages of the cannery be manifested? It is in these 4 words that the products are specially supplied to the troops. This is our unique advantage. After speaking, he looked at Yang Aguo and said, Uncle Yang, you just need time to accumulate word of mouth, and advertising for a while will be useless. This is not false at all, so we have to find a way for consumers to believe it when they see it. Then he looked at Zhou Wangzhen and said, What do the people believe in? Believe in the party, the government, especially the People's Liberation Army. From the 8-year anti-Japanese war, to the defeat of 8 million reactionary troops by Xiaomi and rifles, to the fight against US aggression and aid Korea, and the world's most powerful the People's Liberation Army has never let the common people down. Although there is no war now, but whenever the common people encounter natural disasters or flood relief, the first thing that comes to mind is the People's Liberation Army. Therefore, our cannery, as long as it is released to the military with the brands we supply, people will naturally believe in our quality. Zhou Wangzhen loves hearing this, especially. He came down from the army. Liang Yuchen thinks about this as well. Once they encounter any natural or man-made disaster, as long as they see the green of the People's Liberation Army, the people will feel at ease and know that they are saved. Over the years, the people's feelings and yearning for the army are a real golden sign. The equipment and food for the troops, I dare not say how high the grade is, but the quality is absolutely first class. Who dares to play tricks on the military supplies? That's courting death. Well. Zhou Wangzhen pondered for a while, nodded, and said, It makes sense. However, even if it means that it is of good quality, the common people may not necessarily like to eat it, right? It's not about eating. Liang Yifei smiled and asked an irrelevant question, Uncle Zhou, now parents all hope that their children can go to college, but if they fail, they are entering a factory. Why is this? Learn cultural knowledge. It's still a question. Yang Aguo said. Why did you learn cultural knowledge? This time, Liang Yifei asked and answered his own questions. After a pause, he said, It's not because college students are allotted for distribution when they come out. It's because of their cadre status, salary, benefits, housing allocation, and household registration. There are benefits. Several adults were taken aback by what he said, and then they all laughed. It's a bit straightforward, but that's the truth. After going to university for a few years, you will get a good job, high salary, good treatment, different identities, and the country will raise you, so you have a good face. Right, to put it bluntly, superior. Liang Yifei continued, it is also reasonable to repackage the canned food with the words internal special supply printed on it. A few dollars can't buy a real superiority, but it can buy a feeling of superiority. According to fashionable words say, our canned food not only has use value, but also has added value. When these words came out, the three adults were a little stunned. At first, I didn't expect Liang Yifei to be able to say something like the frontier of the times when he got out of jail. Second, considering their own experiences, what he said really makes sense. The so-called privilege and superiority are not necessarily derogatory terms. In short, they are different and better than others. It's like evaluating a model worker in a factory. In fact, there is not much money to be rewarded. If you get an evaluation, you may not be able to get a salary increase, but the employees can fight for it. To put it bluntly, isn't it the feeling of I'm better than everyone else? And now these self-employed people earn so much money to buy a car, and they don't need tens of thousands of yuan per car, and it is really 10 times worse than the hundreds of thousands? It's not a face. Driving a car of hundreds of thousands of dollars feels superior to others. Director, we're not producing canned food for the troops now. Isn't that a lie to print this? Yang Aguo interrupted again. Zhou Wangzhen and Liang Yuchen were not happy to hear this, so they finally came up with an idea that looked good, and Lao Yang was making trouble here. But this worry is indeed justified. Even in order to make money, you can't cheat. This is the basic principle. Yifei, the idea is yours, what do you say? Zhou Wangzhen asked. What does this say? Liang Yifei chuckled, the backlog of canned food was originally planned to supply the troops, right? That's right. The quality of canned food has nothing to say, it's much better than the outside, that's right. Internal special supply refers to quality. It's a military industrial quality specially supplied to the army. How can this be a lie? Yang Aguo opened his mouth subconsciously, and instinctively prepared to pick on. But his mouth was open, but he didn't know what to say. Zhou Wangzhen glanced at Lao Yang with a half-smile, and finally made a final decision, okay, Yifei, you say a combination of punches, let's hit the first punch first, get a batch out, explore the way, and then decide on the next step. After the small meeting, Zhou Wangzhen and Yang Aguo left in a hurry. Yang Aguo had to go home quickly, it was almost 10 o'clock, his mother-in-law was fierce, and he came home later than 10 o'clock, no matter what the reason, he would be able to see him kneeling on the washboard the next night. It's very funny, and it's only these days that you can still see such a spectacle, the husband beats the wife, screaming and crying, running around the world, or the wife physically punishes the husband, kneeling on the washboard at the gate in front of the neighbors. Everyone is used to it. When they see a woman hitting a woman, they persuade them to pull it, and when they see someone kneeling on the washboard, they laugh. Few people get divorced because of these things. It's not necessarily because of good relationships, but in this era, most people don't have too many choices and temptations in marriage and work. Once is a lifetime. Zhou Wangzhen went straight back to the factory, and will remake the packaging mold tonight. He is the type who occasionally beats his wife. Liang Yuchen was even more miserable, that is, no wife beat him, no woman punished him to kneel on the washboard, only one son depended on each other, and he hadn't seen each other for several years. You leave it alone, Dad will clean it up. After the people left, there were cigarette butts on the ground, Liang Yifei was working with a broom, and Liang Yuchen took the broom over. Liang Yifei was not idle either, and ran to the sink to wash dishes. While sweeping the floor, Liang Yuchen asked, Yifei, who did you learn these things from? At first glance, what Liang Yifei said sounded like a little cleverness, but after thinking about it carefully, there is a deep truth in it. This principle is the human heart. Moreover, after being imprisoned for a few years, not only did my son not lose touch with the times, but he was at the forefront of the times. The word added value is not something that can be thought of by a little cleverness. Liang Yuchen was a little strange. Liang Yifei stacked the bowls, put them in the cupboard and covered them with a wet towel, and said, Dad, you forgot, I used to set up a street stall, and then I knew how to do business. In prison, I often read books and newspapers to study, there is no other entertainment in the prison. After a pause, he wiped his hands and said with a smile, Besides, you don't know, there are all kinds of people in the prison, the socialites, the officials, and the big bosses, I talked to them, it's really insightful. There are 5 points of truth in this. Having been in prison in 2 lifetimes, for Liang Yifei, it may not be all bad. In the prison, I learned a lot of things that I couldn't learn outside, and I came into contact with some strange people. I was able to calm down and think about the mistakes I made. Prisoners in prisons are criminals, but from another point of view, many of them are also top men in a certain field, and this group of top performers, like Liang Yifei, will reflect on their mistakes after entering, so what they realize is sometimes more profound than those of the successful people who are proud of themselves outside. That's good. Liang Yuchen said, if you lose your horse, how can you know the blessing or the misfortune? You are still young, and the road ahead is very long. After a loss, Dad will be relieved to learn so much. When Liang Yifei was released from prison, Liang Yuchen had a sad face, but in just over half a day, as his son showed more and more changes, the sadness on Liang Yuchen's face was much less, replaced by a relaxed smile. He was not very old at first. He was in his early 40s, just in his prime. He was still in the best time period for a man. He was in good spirits, and he seemed to be a few years younger. In the next few days, Zhou Wangzhen took out a batch of cans from the warehouse and repackaged them according to Liang Yifei's idea. Not much, there are 3,000 bottles and 200 boxes in total. Liang Yifei's idea sounds strange, but whether it works or not, Zhou Wangzhen and Yang Aguo, including Liang Yuchen, are not sure now. Practice is the only criterion for testing truth. Sounds interesting, bragging, theoretical analysis on paper, no matter how good it is, it cannot determine the result. The words on the packaging are easy to print, but if the market still doesn't buy it, it will be difficult to cut them out. 3,000 bottles are useless. There are not many 3,000 bottles of canned food, and not many people are needed. They don't even take up working hours. They find a few workers to work overtime, and it will be finished in 3 days. The canned food is packed in a box, and the box is also printed with internal special offer and a 5-point star. Zhou Wangzhen squinted and looked at the cans in front of him. The workshop director Pai Deguo followed, touched his chin, smacked his lips, and said to himself, Director, do you think there's something wrong with these cans? What's wrong? Zhou Wangzhen was now focused on the can, and when Lao Pai said something was wrong, he was startled. I can't say it well, how should I say it? Pai Deguo pondered the words and said unclearly, canned food, it is still the same canned food, but why does it feel different from the original? It looks a little bit scary. The words were thoughtless, but Zhou Wangzhen understood it. Because he also felt the same way. What can I say, it's not scary. It's the same can, but after these 4 characters are printed, it makes people feel a sense of awe. It's not necessarily a sense of awe. It is more appropriate to use a sour statement from an intellectual. It's called covered with a mysterious color. This crazy idea is a bit interesting. Okay, let's put it in the warehouse first. Zhou Wangzhen sighed, pondering what to do next. He felt mysterious, but whether the market bought it or not, and whether other people recognized it or not, it's hard to come to a conclusion. According to Liang Yifei's combination fist, it is estimated that he will start spending money later. The money in the account is really limited. First of all, the bank interest must be paid. Zhou Wangzhen is a little hesitant. Should he continue to follow Liang Yifei's suggestion and take the risk of finishing this set of combination punches, or should he follow the normal method first? He hadn't figured it out yet. When the cans were moved to the warehouse, something went wrong. When entering the warehouse, count the points. Click and click, originally 200 boxes of canned food, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com only listed 179 cases. 21 boxes disappeared. Liang Yifei heard this from Liang Yuchen's mouth. A full tenth of the can was lost. Liang Yuchen muttered, "I've seen a ghost, I've lost it before, but not so much." Employees taking things from their own factories are not considered stealing. If you love the factory like home, you also regard the factory as home. The things at home, don't just take it. Not only the cannery, but other factories as well. Even a reformer like Zhou Wangzhen is used to it, as long as it's not too much, turn a blind eye. In the past, materials were not abundant, and workers often went to the warehouse to get canned food for food, and some brought them home. However, you can buy everything now. After eating canned food for a long time, the taste is really greasy and crooked. The workers in the factory know it by themselves. There are too many preservatives, pigments, and saccharin added to this thing, which is not good for the body. Except for very few people who can't live without taking advantage, this kind of loss is getting less and less. But even in the most exaggerated time before, there was no loss of more than 1/10 of a batch of goods, not even 1%. This time, there were 21 boxes missing, and the properties were immediately different. This is called the embankment collapsed by the eel, and the building was stolen by stealing the bricks. Can the corner of socialism be dug like this? This is not nonsense. Zhou Wangzhen had to pay attention. To investigate thoroughly. Thanks for watching, please subscribe. It's funny to say that, knowing that a large number of cans were stolen, Zhou Wangzhen's first reaction was actually there are enemy special agents to sabotage. In the past, canned food was kept in warehouses and no one stole it. Why is there less now? In just 2 days, it disappeared without knowing it. But on second thought, it's not right. Put it in the past, it's really not impossible. The cannery is dedicated to the army. After the founding of the People's Republic of China, it has been fighting one after another. For a period of time, the relationship with the surrounding area was very tense. Several spies came to destroy the military materials. Not a fantasy. But now? The eggs of the enemy's special leisure are moldy, so many dams, power plants, and state units with strategic value are not destroyed, but they come to steal hundreds of cans of canned food that you can't sell? If the enemy is at this level, then there is no need to worry, the red flag will be placed in the world in minutes. First, I scolded a few people in the security department, and found out all the nonsense at work, reading newspapers and bragging. I took this opportunity to educate me hard, and then started to specifically check the waste. These days, there is no high technology, and anti-investigation methods are not popular. These broken things in the enterprise can't be found if you really want to investigate. In the afternoon of the same day, the truth came out. Sure enough, it's a thief. When he got off work, Zhou Wangzhen stopped at the door with a few people from the security department, checked them one by one, and arrested 4 people. 3 are from the production line, and 1 is from the security department. The security section chief's face turned green, and in front of Zhou Wangzhen, he kicked him. Bring them all to the office and stand in a row. The security section chief also stood beside him with a dark face. Zhou Wangzhen's forehead is on fire. If you want to give him a knife, he will immediately turn into a Onir med knife and kill the quartet. I said that you are all old employees in the factory. Usually, the children and their wives want to eat, so I will take a bottle or two. I won't say anything. Behind the bicycle, cover it with a raincoat and take it out to the factory. If you think I'm blind, or if you think I've stolen public property, it's not a crime. He came down from the battlefield, and he has a suffocating spirit. Although the factory's benefits are not good, he does things fairly and does not seek personal gain. He wants to lead the factory forward, and is very authoritative in the factory. When he got angry, he lowered his head and didn't dare to make a sound. Seeing that they didn't talk back, with their faces lying down, being hammered, and being beaten upright, Zhou Wangzhen's anger was relieved by 3 points, but his face was still dark, and he slapped heavily on the table with one arm, and reprimanded, "You guys don't have rice at home. What if it's out of the pot? Take it home in boxes and eat it as food. This thing has preservatives, don't you know it?" Saying that, he glared at the guy in the security section on the left, "Especially you, Bai Hongjian, you are in the field of security and law enforcement and break the law. Tell me, what should you do?" Bai Hongjian hadn't spoken yet, but the security section chief flew past again, and before he could get up, he pointed his nose and scolded him. "A bicycle, a box on the left, a box on the right, a box in the back, a big bar and a box, and go out with a big raincoat. You can do it, I didn't see it before, what about this ability? Yes, don't you want to change your career to play acrobatics? Tell me, I will write a letter of introduction and introduce you to the city acrobatics troupe to raise monkeys, okay?" As the saying goes, beating is both hurt and scolding, but love. The section chief kicked and scolded, and the factory manager was relieved. The punishment would not be too severe. Bai Hongjian covered his buttocks and laughed. "Factory director, section chief, I don't keep monkeys. Didn't I have a new girlfriend?" Zhou Wangzhen waved his hand impatiently, "What's the mess? Your girlfriend keeps monkeys." "Oh no, she told you to steal it." No, factory manager, I brought my girlfriend a bottle to eat home. After my future father-in-law saw it, he said that it would be a good idea to give it away. He asked me to help me get more, and he gave it to him. Those old colleagues, old comrades, old friends." Bai Hongjian said pitifully, "Leader, you said, I'm ugly, poor, and short, and I finally have a girlfriend, so my father-in-law can't help it. You talk about cross-talk." Hearing this reason, Zhou Wangzhen's heart moved slightly, he glared at him, and continued to ask the others with a stern face, "Then what is the reason for you guys?" "I gave it to my son's head teacher." "Factory manager, I was thinking that my wife's relatives came from the countryside and brought them some canned food back. When they saw these words, they would not dare to underestimate my wife. My wife also has face in her hometown. The reasons for the gossip are basically given away. I also have my own food." Lao Qian from the finance department said that his daughter-in-law was recently hospitalized. There were more than a dozen people in the ward, and there were too many people who were noisy and had no appetite for eating. That day, when he saw the production line processing canned food, he thought it was a new product, so he brought a canned peaches for her. Unexpectedly, this mother-in-law has such an appetite. While eating, he shouted loudly in the ward, saying, "This special offering is delicious, it doesn't matter that ordinary people can't buy it," and so on, and he insisted that he bring it every day. Lao Qian's face actually made me feel aggrieved. "You said this mother-in-law, don't throw the bottle away after eating, but put it on the bedside table, and use it to pour water and make tea, so I'm not afraid of using it as urine. The jug is up. Old money, it can't be used as a urinal. The mouth of the can is very fast. I'll cut your eggs for you." Bai Hongjian said with a grin. Anyway, the arrested people are all plausible and righteous. It seems that as long as the reason is right, it is only right and proper to take things from the public. Zhou Wangzhen waved his hand in annoyance, Okay, shut up. You guys are okay, you're stealing things one by one and you're stealing the truth. Putting it aside before, for such a big event, he would definitely punish these people severely, at least by writing inspections and doing self-criticisms at conferences. But after listening to their wrong reasoning, Zhou Wangzhen didn't think about it anymore. Why didn't anyone steal the canned food in the warehouse before? Now that the new packaging has been put on, a large number of them have been stolen immediately. This is not a positive proof, not only because he thinks it is mysterious, but the new packaging is also attractive to others. From the small to the big, since it is attractive to the employees of the cannery, it is of course also attractive to other ordinary people. This theft incident made Zhou Wangzhen's original 3-point confidence, 7-point hesitation, turned into 5-point confidence, maybe more. We still have to continue talking with Liang Yifei, and continue to work according to his ideas. After get off work the next day, Zhou Wangzhen took Yang Aguo to Liang Yuchen's house again. Before I came, I went to the non-staple food store on purpose. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com cut 2 caddies of pork trotters, 1 caddy of large intestines, and brought a bottle of wine. Liang Yuchen put some green onions and red peppers in the small kitchen outside, fry them until fragrant, and the whole row of staff rooms could smell it. A colleague passed by after get off work and asked with a smile, "Lao Liang, does your family have a happy event today?" A plate of stir-fried pork intestines with garlic and chili peppers is very hot and green. When you bite into it, your mouth is full of fat and oil. It's very refreshing. There was also a plate of cut pig feet, served with some peanuts. The 3 adults drank a round first, and Liang Yifei also sipped a few cups. The local brewed dake was too loud, like a small knife pulling it, which was very unpleasant. This kin theft incident is obviously not a good thing in itself, but several adults are quite happy. Liang Yifei was not surprised. It was unexpected and reasonable. There are 2 ways to make a product, either high quality, low price and real practicality, or human nature. Takeaway, taxi hailing, bike sharing, online games, and even health supplements are all examples. Addictive, cool, social, lazy, anxious, greedy, etc., grasp any one of human nature to the extreme, and the market will pay for it. Now that the economic conditions are better, it is not unaffordable to buy a bottle of canned food for a few dollars. There are also a group of small bosses who have become rich but have no social status and are eager to show off their wealth to find a sense of existence. Don't talk about the 90 years when many products still have to be supplied by ticket and limited supply. Even in 2018, in Liang Yifei's last life, there are still many people who will proudly take out internal supply, special supply on various occasions. Tobacco and alcohol show off. Of course, relying on these 4 words can only solve the urgent need. If you want to go far, you have to rely on quality and innovation. That's a later story. Zhou Wangzhen had a cup with Liang Yuchen and asked Liang Yifei, "Yifei, your first move of the combination boxing has paid off. What will you do next?" Liang Yifei said at the time that there are 3 reasons for wanting to make a surprise move. Improved product, marketing, advertising. At that time, I only talked about the first point, and I didn't elaborate on the last 2. I was thinking that after the first move had some results, I would use the latter 2 to negotiate the price and sell it. In this matter, his thinking habits in his previous life were that he would never end the game if he didn't see a rabbit or a hawk, and if he didn't explain the benefits. But in the past 2 days, he thought about it seriously. The cannery is a small factory with limited oil and water. This time, it is mainly a trial, and the most important thing is to get things done. The identity of the prisoner of reform through labor is young, and there is no successful case before. If the market does not give feedback, he will rush to talk about the specific bonus. There are only 2 results, either frighten the other party and feel that he is a lion and open his mouth, or talk about a painless reward. This is not what he wants to see. Get things done first, then money. This part of the market is mainly about dignitaries. Uncle Joe, the factory is about to stop production now, can you let everyone go out to the market? Everyone goes to the market. Zhou Wangzhen glanced at Yang Aguo, frowned, and said, is there enough manpower in the marketing department? This is not for Yang Aguo, but for Liang Yifei. The more people, the better. It's best to go to those who are idle. Liang Yifei said. Zhou Wangzhen thought about it for a while, I'm afraid it won't work. Sales is not a very popular job. I don't even mention the commission, and I have to be outside in the wind and the sun, looking at people's faces and pleasing them in every possible way. No matter how well you do, that is, a few more dollars in bonus at the end of the month, it is not enough to buy a new pair of shoes. Let the people of the marketing department run the market. Can you let others go too? Disaster. The employees of the factory have the side of being hardworking and honest, and the side of being unwilling to take responsibility and care about each other. Even if it is a job, one has to be selective. In order to get a salary of 2 yuan and 50 cents for the first level salary, it is possible to get a head start. Even if the same job is scheduled for morning and evening shifts, it can go to the factory director's office. No one wants to do the extra work of running the market, which is hard and unprofitable. If the apportionment is forcibly apportioned, the best result can only be that Yang favors yin and disobeys foreign workers. Zhou Wangzhen, the factory manager, said he had power, but he didn't. He usually said a few words and transferred a post. But if the workers really got into trouble, he could only appease them, not to say they were fired. Is to be very careful with deductions from wages. Yang Aguo was even more unhappy, thinking in his heart, what does this mean? Everyone can run into the market, but our marketing department is a waste? Liang Yifei shook his head and said, according to my opinion, running the market doesn't have to be so hard. I don't ask for help, don't look at people's faces and drink with them, I just go shopping with my wife and children, or make phone calls. It's very relaxing. Before Zhou Wangzhen could speak, Yang Aguo interrupted and said, just kidding. There is still such a good thing? Xiao Yang, you are still young, I don't understand. I thought that running the market was going to the park. If the market was so easy to run, I would. What are we doing? For Liang Yifei, Yang Aguo is actually quite contradictory. On the one hand, after the internal special confession was effective, he became a little convinced and hoped that Liang Yifei could really solve the problem. He is a coder in the factory. If the factory is good, it will be good for him. Maybe the problem of children entering the factory will be solved easily. But on the other hand, he was worried that Liang Yifei really solved the problem. Doesn't it seem that he, the market leader, is very incompetent? It made my heart a little split. Sometimes I held the beam and said a few words, and sometimes my tone was sour. Liang Yifei ignored him and continued, in addition, since these employees are working for the factory, the transportation subsidies and telephone bill subsidies should be given in the factory, and there will be leave, so it can't be counted as absenteeism and lateness. My dear, that's called running the market. The unit pays them to go shopping. Yang Aguo's mentality has collapsed now, he can't control his emotions, and he can't help but interrupt. Piri Yang Kaihu said, if it's as easy as you said, I'll be responsible for mobilizing other departments. People. Liang Yifei had been ignoring him just now, but at this moment he suddenly called out okay, and before he finished speaking, a cigarette was handed over like a stream of water. Uncle Yang, let's do it like this. You will arrange the mobilization. Ah! Yang Aguo was stunned. When he complained, Liang Yifei immediately grabbed the excuse and climbed up. The cigarette is in the air, he doesn't pick it up, and it doesn't matter if he doesn't pick it up. Zhou Wangzhen glanced at Yang Aguo, then at Liang Yifei, and was amused. Lao Yang is usually a good person, so why would you put a few words into a suit for a child? Well, they haven't told you what to do, but you issued a military order first. Yang Aguo is also hesitant. Can you take this cigarette? If you don't answer, you are frightened by a child and don't say it, and it seems that it is your responsibility to run the market poorly. Take it, you have to do it yourself when you offend people. In the end, I took it, didn't smoke, don't put it on my ears, and said embarrassingly, it's okay, I don't ask for help, I don't get tired, and there are subsidies. As long as I can guarantee these, I will mobilize. I have no confidence, and in the end there is no result, so I can't rely on me. Okay. Liang Yifei nodded and looked at Zhou Wangzhen, then it's about advertising. It will cost you some money. Speaking of spending money earlier, Zhou Wangzhen estimated that he was beating his heart out, but now he has more and more confidence in Liang Yifei and said, it's okay to spend money, but it can't be too much, there's not much money in the factory's account. This time, the small meeting was held until the early morning. Liang Yifei poured beans in a bamboo tube and explained all the following tricks. Another family was surrounded by smoke, and Zhou Wangzhen and Yang Aguo were sent away. Liang Yifei got up and opened the window to dissipate the smell of smoke. Damn, I also said that I should quit smoking in this life. If this goes on, even if I don't smoke, I will be killed by second-hand smoke. Liang Yuchen continued to sweep the floor as usual, and asked, Yifei, I was in trouble just now. What do you think about the reward? Do you really want money, or is it just a pretense to enter the factory? After listening to Liang Yifei say the last 2 points, Liang Yuchen instinctively felt that there was a drama. I want money. Liang Yifei said naturally. Then if the canned food is sold in the factory in the end, I won't give you any money. He thought about it for a while, shook his head and said, Old Joe still keeps his word. If he doesn't give him money, I'm afraid. If he gives a few $100s, it won't be worth it. A few $100s is a lot, and his monthly income is only 200, but compared to the hundreds of thousands of bottles of canned food, the reward of a few $100s is too worthless. Dad, don't worry. Liang Yifei pointed to his temple, and said with a half-smile, I have not only an idea of selling canned food, but also an idea of asking the factory to give me a large reward. I don't want it, I'm afraid he will grab it. Give me. This sounds absurd. But Liang Yuchen looked at Liang Yifei for a long time, didn't say a word, hummed, turned around and went to help his son make the bed. After my son was released from prison, the whole person was not the same as before. After a few years in prison, the cleverness and ruthlessness of his son are still there, but he is more prudent and restrained, and there are things he can't see through. How should I put it? In less than a week, he already had an inexplicable confidence in Liang Yifei. Binhai City Department Store, on the second floor of a non-staple food specialty store, there was a middle-aged man who was limping around in front of the counter. Look at the young man who is the secretary. The waiter hurriedly greeted him and said with a smile, Hello, leader, we have. You don't have all the goods here. Jin, the elder of the propaganda section of the cannery who has been recuperating because of the old cold legs, waved his hand. The material needs of the people are increasing day by day, so your shopping malls should keep up. Leader, we have a lot of products here, which one do you want? I'll help you find it. The waiter said. Cough cough, our chief used to be in the army and liked to eat canned beef that was specially provided in-house. The taste and quality are much better than the canned food on the market, but I didn't see it when I walked around here. The young secretary said. Internal special supply? This. The waiter asked suspiciously, which brand are you talking about? The little secretary was about to speak, but the old chief waved his hand again, Xiaozhang, don't make specialization. It's fine if they don't sell it here, let's go to other places to see. Saying that, he limped away from the counter. The first agricultural and non-staple food market in Binhai City, a store specializing in canned food, candied fruit and dry goods. Mom, I want to eat canned food. The little boy who was talking looked like he was 6 or 7 years old. He was as fat as a pig, but he was still being held by his mother with great difficulty, showing that he was extremely spoiled. Okay, Mom bought you canned food. Boss, what canned food do you have? The store owner wore white sleeves and said with a smile, Hey, you're right, my family has the best canned food in the whole market. Pears, apples, peaches, bayberry. The little boss was also lip-smacking, his fingers slid over the shelf full of cans behind him, and he said a long list of dishes as if he were reporting the name of the dishes. Mom, I want to eat everything. The fat little pig licked his fingers and looked greedy. Sister, if you buy more than 5 bottles, I will give you a discount. The boss said with a face of business experience, canned food is not bad, you can eat it slowly when you buy it back. The woman holding the child hesitated for a moment, and said uneasy, there are too many preservatives in canned food. I heard that it is not sanitary. They use rotten peaches to spoil apples, and there are a lot of chemical additives. After 10 years of reform and opening up, people's living standards have improved, and they have begun to pursue the quality of life. The Qigong craze and healthcare product craze have gradually risen, and people are paying more and more attention to their own health. There were 7 or 8 customers in the sales department, and when they heard this, they all looked back. The little boss's face sank. Sister, don't talk nonsense if you don't buy it, we are all from regular manufacturers. Do you have the kind of canned food that is specially provided by the army? The eldest sister said, my lover is a retired army officer. In the past, the army made canned food. Our big treasure ate it and it was nutritious and delicious. Look at how white and fat he looks. Yes, do you have any at home? Sister, you're just kidding me. I'm not an army. How can I have an army? It's not a reselling of military supplies. The little boss said. My lover said that the canned food of the army is also sold in the market, but it is relatively rare and popular. The eldest sister seemed to be worried about the health of her baby son, and shook her head, forget it, I'd better look at a few more. Hello, this is the customer service department of Asia Mall, I'm the operator, I'm very happy to serve you. The Asia Shopping Mall, which originated in Zhengzhou at the earliest, cannot be compared with the department stores with strong background in national chains for the time being in terms of scale and financial resources. But when it comes to service quality, Binhai Asia Mall deserves to be the first in the city and even in the province. In the days when most of the counter waiters were still shy of customers, Asia established the Smile service and put forward the slogan of home away from home, and the service attitude was better than that of flight attendants. It is also the first shopping mall in the province to open a telephone service department. Hey, do you have canned food in your store? It's the kind of tin packaged food with a 5-point star. By the way, it was provided to the troops in the past. On the other end of the phone, someone with a strong Shanghai accent asked. The operator was very skilled in business, and after a bit of thinking, he said, hello, we have more than 20 kinds of canned food from various manufacturers, most of which are made of iron. But there is no 5-point star like you mentioned, it is for the army. Hey? I heard that you have it. Do you check it again? I promised to bring it to my relatives and friends. I'm sorry sir, can you tell me the specific brand? I can't remember, it's the kind with a 5-point star and a few words for it inside. During this period, with Binhai City as the center, large shopping malls, non-staple food markets, and large and small retail stores in several major cities in Nanjiang province have successively discovered new business opportunities. There seems to be a canned food with a 5-point star printed on the market that is specially supplied to the army. It is very popular, and consumers often call or come to inquire in person. But the strange thing is that there is no way to purchase the goods. At this time, the Nanjiang Provincial Daily published an advertisement on the second page. UU reading www.uugonshu.com. It is not surprising that advertisements appear in newspapers. Newspapers rely on this to make money. Every newspaper has dozens or even hundreds of advertisements on several pages every day. The strange thing is the ad itself. There is no content, just a big 5-point star. Nanjiang Daily has 8 pages and dozens of news advertisements, big and small, but this advertisement is the most attractive. Because it's the strangest, nothing. It is not uncommon to see people with 2 legs, but it is absolutely unforgettable to see people with 4 legs, so curious. I have never seen such news, let alone such an advertisement. What does it mean? These days, entertainment activities are very limited. One of the most common things people do at work is to drink tea and read newspapers. Almost every unit will order several newspapers, and local daily newspapers are even more essential. Just this 5-point star has suddenly become a major piece of news in Nanjiang province. I don't know how many offices and homes are talking about this strange advertisement. On the second day, there was an extra line of words above the 5-point star. In-house special supply, military quality. The content is a little richer, but I still don't know what it is. On the third day, these 8 characters appeared on the previous pattern, with the small characters delicious, nutritious, hygienic, and safe. Oh, I see, it should be eaten. So many people began to guess what it was, and the answers were varied. Some people in the same unit also gambled on tobacco and alcohol. On the 4th day, the answer was finally announced. A can, a simple but textured tin can, uniformly printed with a star, and below it are 4 small characters of internal special supply. There is also a contact number. Since it was published in the newspaper, the canned food sales work has entered the final sprint stage. Zhou Wangzhen insisted that Liang Yifei come to the factory with Liang Yuchen every day. If something happens, Liang Yifei will be able to answer on the spot and provide on-site guidance, so as not to run to the house after get off work every day. The symposium is held until midnight, and the effect is not good when people are tired. Actually, there is nothing wrong. They are all implemented according to Liang Yifei's predetermined plan. What can happen? Liang Yifei follows Zhou Wangzhen to listen to the reports of the employees every day. Most of the time, he spends most of his time in Liang Yuchen's office, reading newspapers and drinking tea. The marketing department used to be separated from the publicity department, and it still shared a large office. Several of the publicity departments in the office belonged to Liang Yuchen's subordinates. Their attitude towards Liang Gongzi was naturally different from that of other people, and they were more polite. As for Yang's subordinates in the marketing department, apart from work, they usually don't talk to Liang Yifei much. Liang Yifei's idea cannot be said to offend people, but the ideas of the market scientist and Yang Aguo are somewhat similar, contradictions. In particular, Liang Yifei was a prisoner of labor reform who was only released. He was only 19 years old, which deepened the ambivalence of this group of people. The pillars of society, the pillars of the unit, are not as good as a prisoner of labor reform. Where do you put your face? In addition, whether it is the marketing department or the publicity department, it can be clearly felt that everyone has a taste of staying away towards Liang Yifei. The hat of prisoners of labor reform is too heavy for ordinary people. There was a young man named Pan Zhu, who graduated from high school and specialized in writing publicity drafts. He was half a year younger than Liang Yifei. He wore thick glasses like a beer bottle. He was full of vigor, and was curious about everything. Different people see things differently. In the eyes of others, Liang Yifei is a bad element of black history. In Pan Zhu's view, Liang Yifei is a prodigal son who will never change for money, and is a bit legendary. Early in the morning, behind the thick glasses, I was full of curiosity. Brother Yifei, I heard that people in prison are suffocated. Men do things like that. He looks handsome, like a cream pie. If you go in, you will be by the boss, right? That's true. Liang Yifei smiled, but it's not as exaggerated as you said. The discipline is still very strict, mainly because of your own wishes. In Beihua prison, there is a prisoner nicknamed Old Butt, who specializes in reselling cigarettes, female star magazine covers, etc. It is said that this nickname was originally named because of this. Brother Yifei, you are handsome too, is there that what? Pan Ju continued to ask gossip, not knowing whether it was because of his high myopia, or whether he wanted to appreciate Liang Yifei's June at a close distance and speak when the time came. The face was about to come up. What do you mean, you want me to kiss you? Liang Yifei stepped back and smiled. Pan Ju, why are you asking this? Collect materials. Pan Ju is a good writer. He usually likes to write, and he often submits articles to various newspapers. He has actually published some tofu nuggets, including poetry, prose, and commentary. What's there to say about this material? It's good if you write about the reform of the factory. Liang Yifei didn't want to talk to him about the prison. These young people can make mistakes if they don't get it right, and then implicate themselves in it. That's not bad luck. Just as he was talking, Zhou Wangzhen and Yang Aguo came in a hurry with today's newspaper in their hands. The newspaper was delivered today, and the advertisement of the cannery was officially and completely published. The newspapers from a few days ago were taken out and lined up on the table. Looking at this row of appetizing newspapers, even Yang Aguo has to admit that Liang Yifei's crazy ideas are unthinkable to ordinary people. In the past 2 days, he was playing mahjong at the door of his house after get off work. A group of Ma friends were talking about this advertisement, and some people bet on what it was. Some said it was clothing, some said it was motorcycles, and some said TV sets. From the small to the big, the leopard can be seen from the inside, and from the chat on a small mahjong table by the roadside, you can see what the current people care about. We have to see the results. Zhou Wangzhen ordered some newspapers. The advertisement itself, I didn't say it, everyone thought it was interesting and novel. The effect, however, has yet to be manifested. In order to implement Liang Yifei's plan, there was a lot of noise. The whole factory mobilized half of the people to go to the market, and spent thousands of dollars on advertising. The whole factory knew that Director Zhou would have a big move and the finances would be fast. Bottomed out. These matters were all decided by Zhou Wangzhen. Likewise, he also took responsibility and took certain risks. In case he still can't sell it in the end, it is rumored that he did this entirely because of a suggestion made by a reformed through labor prisoner. Zhou Wangzhen thought about it and said to Yang Aguo, "Old Yang, we have done the preliminary work anyway. In the past few days, you will take the people from the marketing department to take the initiative to run around the market and contact the shopping mall and the non-staple food market, to see if the other party is willing to buy from us." Yang Aguo was at the side, and his spirit began to split again. The conflicting mood continued to ferment. He laughed and said, "Don't worry about it, factory manager. It takes time for market feedback, how can it be so fast?" As he said that, he took out a pair of chess from the drawer, opened Chihi Hanja, and said, "What Xiao Yang said, we've done it, and then it's fine anyway, if you are idle, you will be idle. How to do it, Lao Liang, come and kill a game. It is also customary to play chess to pass the time during work hours. Old Liang, let's have a game." Yang Aguo challenged Liang Yuchen. Liang Yuchen smiled and waved his hand. How could he have such thoughts now? Whether Liang Yifei's idea would work wonders, he was more nervous than Zhou Wangzhen. "Director, let's play a game together. I can't play chess, but I can't play you." Zhou Wangzhen didn't have the same thoughts, and Yang Aguo was still able to play chess, and he won the top 3 in the factory competition. Yang Aguo said to Liang Yifei again, "Then Xiao Yang, come here, I know there is no other entertainment in the prison, but you can only play chess. I'll see if you have learned your skills. My level is average. Liang Yifei smiled. Yang Aguo was right, there is only such an entertainment activity in the prison, and there are really masters. Those who have been in prison usually play chess. Yang Aguo took off a horse and a rook on his side. I will play chess with your father, let him have a horse, I will play with you, and let you have a chariot and a horse. However, Liang Yifei took the two pieces back to the chessboard and said, let the chess not be used, I don't play well, I'll just go first. Without waiting for Yang Aguo to respond, he stretched out his slender index finger and pushed a red car in the lower left corner a step forward, 9 in 1. There was a commotion all around, and even Zhou Wangzhen, who was mediocre at chess, frowned. Isn't this a cannon who sold his horse to the opponent? Xiao Liang, you said you would, isn't this a random walk? Yang Aguo was afraid that Liang Yifei would regret his chess, so he quickly picked up his black cannon, jumped over it with a snap, and ate the red horse that was sent out. Liang Yifei didn't speak, and also took a symmetrical step to the car on the other side. Why are you playing chess? You're just walking blindly. Yang Aguo was not polite at all, snapped and ate another horse from Liang Yifei. Well, there are 6 characters of chariot, horse, and gun, and 2 moves at the beginning. Liang Yifei lost 2 of them in an almost absurd way, and let the opponent's run occupy a very powerful position. After 2 more steps, Liang Yifei and the other party lost a big chariot, starting with a slight advantage, 1 less rook, a slightly bigger advantage. After a few steps down, Liang Yifei's Hengzi was at a disadvantage and was forced to be very passive. At the 9th step, Liang Yifei shot 1 level 5, and said softly General. Yang Aguo smiled and tilted his general to avoid the double cannons. Liang Yifei stretched out his index finger and gently pushed the last red car. General. Yang Aguo wanted to move Shui subconsciously, but when his hand fell on Shui, he stopped. The expression that was very relaxed just now suddenly became serious, his brows were wrinkled together a little bit, and he held on to his handsome fingers without moving. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. An old employee of the propaganda department who was onlookers smiled with a teacup in his arms. Don't watch Lao Yang, chess. Xiao Yang is a Tuaran pulley, evil and cruel, just because you are greedy, as long as you hit the move, you can start the game 10 steps will kill you. Yang Aguo recalled the chess game just now, isn't it? If he hadn't started the game because he was greedy for Liang Yifei's 2 horses, how could he have given him a step-by-step calculation? I said, this trick of yours is too much, it's just cheating. Yang Aguo said embarrassingly, his face flushed. Liang Yifei was very polite and smiled cheerfully, I don't know how to play either. There is an old man in prison who used to set up a stall to play chess to make money. How can he teach? How can I learn? Another old worker made fun of him, Old Yang, you are not good at chess. If you lose, you will lose. What are you cheating? Soldiers don't tire of cheating, and they don't play chess with cheating. Children still use some tricks when playing marbles. Yang Aguo couldn't bear his face, he stretched out his hand to mix up the chessboard. Like Mrs. Xianglin, he kept muttering to himself, this, how can I play chess like this, can't be like this, can't be like this. Everyone in the office is laughing. Lao Yang is not a good chess player. He likes to sneer at people when he wins. He has ridiculed everyone in 2 departments in one office, however, his chess skills are indeed good. No one in the whole factory said that he would definitely win against him. Today, he suffered a dull loss in Liang Yifei's hands. It was a relief for everyone, and they were all happy to see Lao Yang's embarrassed appearance. At this moment, the phone of the marketing department rang. For some reason, everyone was startled by the ringtone, and turned their heads to stare at the phone, but they all forgot to answer. In the silence, Pan Ju suddenly said, Yo, you're not here to order canned food, right? So soon. Calling to order canned food. Yang Aguo Ki was killed and lost, and his face was quite overwhelmed. He gave Xiao Pan a blank look and picked up the phone. "Hey, Canary, who are you?" The tone is not overbearing, but it is definitely not polite. As a marketer, the attitude and content of answering the phone are very inappropriate. But apart from Liang Yifei, everyone else, including Zhou Wangzhen, was used to it. Regardless of the size of the factory, it used to be dedicated to supplying the military. "I'm the marketing department, what's the matter?" Yang Aguo continued to speak in the tone just now. After he finished speaking, his expression suddenly became a little strange, and he glanced at Liang Yifei like a ghost. Then, while saying he winked at Zhou Wangzhen. "What's wrong?" Zhou Wangzhen walked over and asked. "Really came to order." The purchasing department of the non-staple food market in the city called and asked if there was any canned food in the factory. "I wanted to come to investigate and order a batch of canned food." After talking to the other end of the phone, Yang Aguo hung up. "How's it going?" They all gathered around and asked. Yang Aguo instinctively patted his thigh. After the filming, he probably felt that this action was a little too excited, and he deliberately appeared to be very indifferent, saying, "Director, they will come tomorrow morning, saying that they want to order 200 boxes and call them by name. Want that kind of internal special supply. Good thing." Zhou Wangzhen didn't have schizophrenia, so he didn't have to hide his joy, and he was overjoyed. "Yuchen, your publicity department quickly arranges reception, and tell the people who will go to work tomorrow that they are all in good spirits, and they have cleaned up the factory warehouse. By the way, I have to go to the workshop and ask them to work overtime to repack the remaining cans." When Liang Yifei first came up with the idea, he didn't dare to ask the workers to repack 200 boxes, and he wasted 1/10 of it. Liang Yuchen's heart, which he had been holding from the beginning, finally dropped half of it. Holding the teacup, he smiled lightly. "Director, you are busy with your work, and I will arrange the reception." Zhou Wangzhen didn't make it. Just as he walked out of the door, the phone on the table rang again. He stopped abruptly and looked back at the phone. Although he hadn't answered the phone yet, several people present felt a tacit understanding: if something went wrong, they came to order again. This time, Zhou Wangzhen himself came on stage, walked back a few steps, grabbed the phone, and said in a deep voice, "Hello, this is the Binhai Cannery." As predicted. The phone number from Asia Mall, the other party also wanted to check it out first. If there is no problem, they will also order a batch of goods. It is also the kind that specifies that it needs special internal supply. Zhou Wangzhen put down the phone. This time, no one spoke in the office, and there was a rare silence. Happiness came so quickly and suddenly that they couldn't believe it. The same canned food, no one wanted it. If I broke my leg and set it dry, now, after repacking it, and after a few dozen advertisements, one family came to the door on their own initiative, begging to buy it. Where is the difference here? Some people have vaguely realized that marketing is likely to become the most important thing for future factory development. Liang Yifei didn't have much mood swings from beginning to end, and he had long expected this result. "It's only 2 phone calls, where are you going? It's still early." At present, in the market, materials have begun to gradually enrich, and wealth has also begun to increase, but the information channels are still very limited. Through effective marketing, it is not difficult to make a product, even a product with little value, become popular overnight. China Turtle Essence, Sanzu Oral Liquid, Melatonin, the products that have swept across the country with an annual output value of billions, are all like this. In a few months, they have gone from unknown to the national front line, and the development speed is fast. The internet industry of later generations is far behind. Courageous and brainy, as long as one counts for one, in the early 1990s, one night can make enough money for a lifetime. For Liang Yifei, a man with too much courage and too much brains, what he should pay attention to in his life is to slow down properly and walk more steadily. As Liang Yifei had expected, the phone in the office never stopped for a few days after it rang for the first time. And the attitude of the cannery has changed significantly with more and more orders. How much? 50 boxes. Are you coming for an on-the-spot inspection? Okay, no problem. When will you arrive? We'll send a car to pick you up. Price, the price can be negotiated, more than 100 boxes can be negotiated. At the beginning, he still bargained, for fear of offending others, but within 2 days, his attitude became obviously tough. The price is definitely not negotiable. If you want, come quickly, I'm afraid it will be out of stock. 40 boxes? No, we can deliver at least 50 boxes. How many times have I said that it's out of stock? It's really out of stock. Wait. How long to wait? I can't tell right now, I'll check it. Increase the price? No, we have signed contracts with other units. You leave your contact information, and I'll let you know when new products come out. More than 400,000 bottles of canned food sounds like a lot, but in the face of the whole province's market, this stock is simply not enough to look at. More than half of it was digested in less than a week, and orders are still coming in one after another. As for the inspection of the factory, this is just going through the motions. It is confirmed that there is such a canning factory. The canning factory has a certain scale and has a license. It is enough that a state-owned enterprise will not cheat. The canning factory used to be specially produced for the army. The infrastructure, machinery, and employees are all first class in domestic counterparts. There is no problem. Zhou Wangzhen is fully confident. As long as the other party comes with sincerity to buy, there will be no leaks. The prison cannery, which once stopped production and almost closed down under the pressure of bank loans, has truly seen the dawn of hope this time, and it can be rejuvenated by the sight of it. Faced with these orders, Yang Aguo was a little confused. After working in the market for so many years, I have never encountered such a situation. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Strange to say, at this moment, his schizophrenia problem seemed to be cured without medicine. Yang Aguo has his own abacus and a philist inside, but he is not a bad person, just an ordinary person. Facts have proved that the effect of Liang Yifei's ideas is really amazing, which has exceeded the limit he could think of, and also exceeded the level of others in the factory. It's not that he is incompetent, but that Liang Yifei's level is really high. Some people will be jealous of their neighbors driving a BMW and driving an Alto, but no one will be jealous of Ma Yun's private jet because he rides a bicycle. Once the gap widens to a certain extent, that jealousy will turn into admiration. Yang Aguo now admires Liang Yifei a little bit. It's no shame to lose to a master. Not only did the problem get better, but it seemed that through this incident, I suddenly realized the true meaning of the market. This market is just like girls. Some girls, if you are dead and out of breath, people just ignore you and feel disgusted when they look at you. What about some girls? When the pole is upside down, it can't go away even if you hit it. The key is to see what kind of man is right. A man with ability can make women cry, and a man with no ability, if you cry again, people will be lazy to look at you directly. The knot in his heart was untied, how he felt pleasing to the eye no matter how he looked at Liang Yifei, and thinking that when Liang Yifei was playing with him when he was a child, Yang Aguo's attitude made a 180-degree turn, and he almost regarded Liang Yifei as his own son and nephew. In private, he took the initiative to ask Zhou Wangzhen, "Factory, should we discuss the matter of rewards?" Zhou Wangzhen nodded without hesitation. Of course, Yifei has made a great contribution to the factory this time. I'll keep my word.